Hello, and welcome to Get In, We're Going Healing. This week, we have our guest, Emily Griffin, returning from our last episode that we talked about relationships and trauma. Today, we are going to talk about motherhood. In honor of Mother's Day, we are going to talk about all different things regarding mothers, motherhood, what it feels like, the stress is like, what the joys, the pleasures, and all things. So, welcome to Get In, We're Going Healing. And welcome to Emily. Hi,
Thank
Emily.
Hi, Tovah. Thanks so much for having me back.
It's always a joy to have you on the show. Great talks, great conversation. Everything flows really good and great information for everybody.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
So, do you want to, for those that didn't catch our first episode, do you want to give a quick introduction?
Sure. So I am a new mother over again. I have two children. I have one that is 5. He just turned 5 last month, and then a brand new daughter who is 4. And they keep me quite busy. And I am a doula. Work a little bit in the postpartum field with that. Vaginal steam therapist, went to school for anthropology, so culture, and the way people have their families and run their villages, and that really interests me. And overall, I'm just, living day to day, figuring out this mother thing like everyone else.
Right. That's really interesting with the anthropology thing. I did not know that. And that actually blends really well into our talk because I know that in my previous talk on generational trauma, we
Hmm.
talked about just some of the stuff that goes on in parenting relationships before, in past times before now, and how that all slides down generation to generation as to how we parent our children.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, well, that even came up in the last talk we had about how having children, no matter how good your relationship is, triggers every single trauma you've had. And now you have to come face to face and deal with it.
Right, right. So I'm a doula as well. I've only done one birth.
That's
it
incredible.
was uh it was not what I was prepared for. I'll say
They,
in the training prepared you for it was going to be this natural thing and you're going to be
Mhm.
highly included. And the birth that I was a part of what ended up being an epidural.
Right.
And so at that, I was left at, well, now what do
Now
I
what do I
do?
do? Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, right? Um, in the doula world, birth world, I guess in general, it's very common to be like, you can write down as specific of a birth plan as you want, but when it comes down to it, there is no birth plan. It's going to go how it's going to go, and that's it, right?
Right? Oh my gosh, that brings up new motherhood in pregnancy before the baby is
Yes.
born. Oh goodness. So first of all, you are the perfect parent before you're actually a parent. You're going to do everything right. You're going to do
Oh, for
this and you're
sure.
going to do that. You're not going to do this, you're not going to do that. And you think that that's exactly how it's going to go. And then then
And then
you're
you become a
thrown
parent.
then you're thrown head first in the deep end and you're like, "Oh, well,
it
that was yeah."
it's a very humbling experience, right? Because you're right. You do look around as a non-parent or a soon-to-be parent, and not everybody, but there are a lot of judgments, right? You're like, oh, I wouldn't do that if I had a kid, or screen time. We're never going to turn on the screen for our kid, or things like that, right? And then, yeah, you get into it, and you're like, if I could just get 10 minutes, go watch a show. Like, I
If
just
I could
need
just
to use the
poo
washroom
by
by myself.
myself.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Like, actually close the door and, not
And
worry about
not have a
anything.
conversation
Yeah.
through the door.
Right? The dog trying to get in, the kid trying to get in, your husband asking where something is. It's like, I
I just
just,
want 5 minutes to
yeah,
myself, like 5 minutes where
yeah.
nobody talks to me and I can just do what I have to do without anybody wanting anything from me.
Holding on to your leg. Yep, it's fun. Regular showers go out the window, right? It's like
Right?
the smell test becomes the standard of when you need to do laundry or when you need to really make sure you have a bath for yourself because everyone else is nice and clean and looks semi
Right.
put together.
But you
And
haven't had a bath in like a week and a half and you're like,
yeah,
it's okay.
you're
I'll
like,
just put on some more deodorant. It'll be all right.
you're cleaning the house and you're like, man, something really smells in here. And you come to the conclusion that it's actually yourself and maybe you need to have a bath. That's just part of motherhood, right? Or is that
Right.
just me?
No, I think that's pretty much the common expectation. So I'm going to bring it back before we get into that, because that's a whole
Absolutely.
another segment of talking about motherhood. So pre-motherhood, I
Mhm.
had my birth plan. I had written it all out. I read all the books. I planned a home birth. I
Mhm.
planned a home birth with a midwife. I planned a water birth. I bought the birthing tub. I did the hypno babies. I did all the stuff for a natural birth. None of it went that way. Absolutely none of it. That was, it would have been fine had my child showed up on schedule, but not my kid. My kid was like, nah, we're good. I don't need to come out. I'm just gonna stay right here. And they're like, so you're a week overdue. We'll just wait. And I'm
Mhm.
like, I know the baby will come out whenever it comes out. And they were like, so you're coming up on 2 weeks overdue. And at that point, you're doing like ultrasounds 2 times a week where they're
Right,
checking on
and
the
stress
baby,
tests, yeah.
stress tests, and all that stuff, where they're like, we just got to make sure the baby's okay. And I'm like, dude, he's kicking out the can in my stomach. Like, he's fine. And they were like, no, no, no. And they're like, well, we think we need to induce you. We think we need to come, he needs to come out, which was not part of my birth plan. And induction was
Right.
not part of my birth plan. Not having pain relief was not planned part of my birth plan. I had planned out that I was going to use all the natural hormones.
Mhm.
The oxytocin was going to kick in, and then like the pain reliever hormones were going to kick in. And all I had to do
Right.
was make it through that 1 minute contraction, and then I was going to be okay and I could take a breather. Yeah, that is not how it went down. Not even a little bit how it went down. And as you know, as they talk about in birth classes, once you start an induction, you are more likely to end up in the situation of having a C-section.
Right.
So I ended up with the induction. I couldn't handle the level of constant pain as the contractions went over and over and over. And
Right,
I just,
because
I,
it's very different than the natural
yeah.
process, right?
And I was not prepared for that. So I
Mm.
ended up with the epidural, which I didn't want because I had a paralysis phobia, which I did
Mm.
not want to not feel my body.
Of
But the
course.
pain was, it was out of control. Like at that point, I was on an oxygen mask. They're yelling at me to slow down my breathing. And I'm like, you slow down your breathing. It hurts.
Right.
So I just couldn't manage. And I ended up with the epidural. Then I ended up with the C-section after
Mhm.
10 and a half hours of labor. They're like, so he's, he's not doing the best. His
Right.
heartbeat is slowing down. And at that point, I'm faced with, now what do I do? I didn't
Yeah.
come all this way not to go home with a baby.
Mhm.
So C-section, which was the absolute worst on my birth plan. It was
Right.
absolutely, no, I don't want this. And guess where I ended up? On the OR table anyway. So,
Right.
a lot of the things did not work out the way that I'd planned. And then, of course, this is something I'm still processing through trauma.
Absolutely.
There's that feeling afterwards that your body betrayed you.
Right, and that's already so ingrained in us as women that there's something faulty about us, right? And then you're right to go through that process when you have planned this perfect birth. Not only are you now dealing with the trauma of that, your body healing on a different level, you also are grieving that birth that you had expected, right?
Right.
And nobody expects anything to go according to plan, but you're right to be on the exact opposite spectrum of what you thought was going to happen. That's a lot for you to deal with.
Mm-hmm. It was it was also eye-opening, because it really is that understanding that no matter how much you plan
Mhm.
anything, life is going to give you what life gives you,
Right.
regardless of what you think your life is going to be like, what you think your birth plan is going to be like, what you think your kid is going to be like.
Hmm.
You get what you get. And as I tell my kid, you get what you get and you don't get upset. You get what you get. Life gives you
Right.
whatever it's going to give you. And this is part of learning that lovely concept of surrender, which I wish I had known back
Hmm.
when that happened. It would have helped me
Right.
work through a lot of stuff.
Well, and there is a balance absolutely of surrender and control. Um, but being in the emotional and mental state of giving birth, you don't have time to process pretty much anything other than what you're going through immediately, right? You can't
Mm-hmm.
step back and be like, I just need 10 minutes to think about this, especially with the urgency of making a decision about a cesarean, right?
Mhm.
Um, because your brain just goes wild. You don't get to step back and be like, hold on a minute. It's like, I
Mhm.
need to make this decision immediately and you'll deal with the fallout later. Um, and you do, but it takes a long time to unpack.
Mhm. I mean, I'm 6 years 6 years out of it and still just realizing
Mm-hmm.
the level of trauma and the level of, again, betrayal. Like there was definitely the thought of women have been having babies for thousands of years
Right. Why
without,
can't I just do
why
this?
couldn't
Yeah.
my body do it? Why couldn't my body, like anyone else? Everybody's had babies before. Why couldn't my body?
Mm-hmm.
And so there was that feeling of my body could not do what I needed it to do, and therefore it was faulty in some
Right.
way. And there was definitely that. I'm not going to say that I'm fully through it, because I don't think that I am. I think I'm still processing some of that, the guilt
Mm-hmm.
and the shame that came along with not being able to do something that women have been able to naturally do for thousands of years.
Well, and to the common phrase that healthy baby is a happy mom, right? It kind of gives you that juxtaposition where, yes, you're right. I do have this happy, healthy baby. But am I not allowed to have struggled with how it happened and give
Mm-hmm.
space to myself to deal with it? And then you don't really have time to start unpacking it because now you have a new baby at home, you know,
Right.
your body's healing. And then you're now trying to figure out being a new parent while also trying to either compartmentalize what happened or try and deal with it at the same time.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm not going to say for certain because I don't have the stats in front of me, but I'm going to say I think that's a big contributor to part of postpartum depression,
Mm-hmm.
which I found unexpected. I didn't even realize
Right.
that I'd had it because I thought it was just normal
Normal.
adjustment. Normal adjustment,
Right.
maybe some baby blues because it's just normal adjustment. I didn't realize that I'd had postpartum until I was well and deeply into it.
And then the large window for um when postpartum can happen, right? It's not like it's just within the first few months. It can be like 2 years, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong. Again, I don't have stats in front of me either, but it's quite a large window where postpartum depression can happen. And also postpartum rage is one that a lot of people don't talk about, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
um, you feel, relatively decent, but then that temper just comes on so quick and you get so frustrated so quickly and you're like, where is this even coming from? And it just happens
Mm-hmm.
and then it's gone sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But
I do find they don't give enough information about that in the hospitals. And I really wish they had. They gave us like
mhm,
a DVD on purple crying and like,
yep,
but they didn't really talk about
the mental
understand.
aspect.
Yeah, understanding what postpartum might feel like,
Right.
understanding when you should ask for help,
Hmm.
knowing the difference between just feeling overwhelmed because you're tired and you're
Right.
basically, you go from the pregnancy of where everything's all about, oh, I just got to make sure I eat right and got to do,
Hmm.
to all of a sudden now you're just seriously in survival mode. You're just trying to keep
Right.
a baby alive, keep it fed. You don't know what the
Yeah.
heck you're doing. You're thrown head first into a brand new job where you're not an intern. You're now all of a sudden
Yeah.
full-fledged into this job, and
You're
you're
the
like,
CEO of this
where
family
was the
now.
training? Like, I got no training on this
Hmm.
job, and you want me to just keep a human alive. My husband and I
Right.
joked that when we left the hospital, we were like, so nobody's going to stop us as we're walking out with this.
Right.
So no one's going to stop us. We just walk out with a
Hmm.
baby, and there's no guidance. There's no, okay, so when you get home, this is what you're going to expect. This is what you're going to do. The first few, there was none of that. It was just, we're like, so we're just going to go with this brand new
Right.
baby and we're just going to go home, and there's nobody.
Alone and right. Well, and that's my husband and I talk about this a lot is there's no village anymore, right? Like you don't have your parents and your grandparents living on the same farm laneway, like um when our parents were having kids, our grandparents were pretty much retired, right? Now our
Mm-hmm.
parents are still working full time for the most part when we're having kids. So that's kind of gone as a resource. Most of our grandparents have passed on. And then layer on top of that a pandemic where you can't even go to your friend's place that has
Right.
kids and like let them distract each other.
Right.
So how do you get that village, those people you can lean on to learn from, right? You're just like you said, you go home and it's like, so this is it now? Like,
Right. I remember thinking to myself, this is my life now. This
yeah.
is this is my life. With a tiny human who just screams, because
Hmm.
it turns out I had what's known as a high needs baby, which I didn't know there was a such thing.
No.
I until I was deeply into it, we thought there was something wrong with him. We
Right.
took him to the doctor. We're like, he cries
Hmm.
all the time. He doesn't stop. He's not, you can't put him down. He just
Right.
screams and cries when you put him down. He won't sleep unless he's actually making physical contact
Hmm.
with you. If you try to put him in the crib, he instantly wakes up and starts screaming.
Right.
He doesn't sleep. He doesn't like, what is the matter with this baby? The picture in the movies, the picture in the commercials, the picture
Yeah.
and everything is this baby that just peacefully sleeps. And you're like, oh, and you
The
change their
most
diaper.
adorable thing.
We're like, where that the brochure promised us a baby that was going to be calm and
I want my money
sleeps.
back. This is
Like,
not
I want my money back. Like, where's my guarantee? There was like no 90-day guarantee. There wasn't even a 30-day guarantee. There wasn't even a week guarantee. We went home with this
no.
baby that just screamed all day. And I'm like, and then, with going into paternity leave and things like
Hmm.
that, my husband took the first week off. But
Right.
at that point, it was not particularly helpful, just in that
Right.
there was no help that he could offer in that first week because it was mostly
No.
just the baby attached to me.
Right. You're trying to figure out feeding, whether that be breastfeeding or bottle feeding. You're trying to figure out their schedule. And
Mm-hmm.
you're right. The baby's pretty much attached to mom infinitely at that point in time. And
Mm-hmm.
even for the first couple months, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'd rather have paternity leave, come home and stay with me like at month 6
Right.
and then like for a couple weeks, or when I can have a little bit of time, when there's a little bit of a
Right.
schedule, you can do a couple things, right? But that's my husband took the first few weeks off with um our most recent daughter. Well, I guess our only daughter, but our most recent child.
Mm-hmm.
Um and yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. And also, by the time you figure out your child's schedule, it's like as soon as you figure it out, they up and change it, right? It's like,
Right.
I've had enough of this one. You figured
Right.
me out. Like, we're moving on.
Right.
Yeah.
I found mommy boards were helpful
Hmm.
in a small degree when you find the right one.
There's a
Because
lot of drama on mama
there's,
boards.
oh my goodness, there's so much judgment. There's so much, people have forgotten that babies are human beings.
Hmm.
And that means they're all different. There
Oh,
might be
yeah.
something that bridges across the board in general, but
Hmm.
everybody's child is different.
And style of parenting for that reason is
Yes.
different. Yeah.
And it has to be, parenting needs to be adjusted to the needs of your actual kid, not based
Hmm.
on somebody else's kid that may not even remotely behave like your kid.
Right.
So I found, as I'm posting on these boards going, how do you get a kid to sleep? He doesn't sleep. He sleeps like 2 hours and then he's up, and then 2 hours and then he's up, and it goes on like that all day. He doesn't nap. They're talking about kids napping for like 2 hours, 3 hours. I'm like, that's not,
That's
that is not
nice.
my experience. Like, I'm lucky if I can get the kid to nap for a half hour.
Right.
And
And
all these,
off of you,
and
maybe.
off of me, oh
Yeah.
boy, kangaroo carries. That wasn't,
Mm,
it was trendy, but not for me. It was necessity for me. I
right.
could not put him down if I wanted him to nap. I've got pictures of my husband too. We had that stretchy Moby wrap.
Yes.
Just in order to get the kid to nap, we would sit on the couch with him tucked into the Moby wrap while we turned on the TV or watched something. Not
Hmm.
not to mention the calm song, the one song that stops your kid from crying. The one song that is a thing, folks. That is a thing. Okay. A calm song is a real thing. It's a song that calms your kid down. Thankfully, it wasn't something like Britney Spears, but it was Led Zeppelin's Whole Lot of Love.
Oh,
I
nice.
still can't hear that song without
No.
like flashbacks of PTSD, as like, and it had to be on repeat because if the song stopped while
Oh,
he was
yeah.
napping, he woke up and started crying again. So we had it on an iPod on repeat, tucked into the band of the Moby.
Oh
So it would
my
just play
goodness.
da 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 da. And it was
You're like, this is the theme song of my life.
right. And it was just constant, just
Mhm.
in order to get him to nap. It was the most insane regiment out of anything that I've ever heard. And when I posted on the board saying, what do? I got a lot of moms saying, well, you should do this and you shouldn't do that. And I'm like, okay, listen, I didn't get on here to ask you what I shouldn't do. I got on here to
Right.
ask for some advice and some
Yeah,
help
some
because I don't know
suggestions.
what to
Yeah.
do. And it wasn't until a mom, bless her heart, thank God for her, recommended on top of everybody else's, have you checked your diet? Have you, this one I hate.
Mm-hmm.
I hate this one. People get on there and they're like, well, maybe it's the things that you're eating that's affecting your milk. Have you tried this and this and this and this? And they make it like it's the mom's fault that the baby
Yeah, you're
is,
doing something
that
wrong.
you must be doing something wrong. And I see it and I still see it on mommy boards. Well, have you tried the elimination diet? Have you tried this? Have you tried that? Maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
your milk. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's this that you're doing. Maybe it's that you're doing. And I'm like, listen, sometimes it's just your kid.
You're like, I don't think my child would cry any less if I was out of the picture.
Right. So this mom said, okay, so here's a piece of advice. Have you ever heard of high needs babies? If you have not, check out the book called
Mm.
the Fussy Baby book by Dr. Sears. And I was like, no, I've never heard of that. So off to Amazon I go and I buy this book and it comes in.
Right.
And I have to say, it was life changing.
Right.
My kid, there's nothing wrong with him. He's just a highly sensitive kid.
Mm-hmm.
And he had different needs than other kids because he's just
Right.
a highly sensitive kid. And it wasn't anything that I was doing wrong that needed to change. It was just strictly who he is.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't figure it out until after we'd gone to the doctor. And we're like, well, colic is supposed to go for 3 months. We're at like 8 months and it's still going.
Right.
So what's the matter? And then the doctor was like, well, it might just be his temperament. I was like,
Oh.
oh, good. Oh, good. So this is just my kid's personality. He's just a jerk. Which is, I mean, that was obviously, it's not very nice to say about your kid, but that's how I felt in the moment. Like he's
Of
just a jerk.
course. Well,
Like
you're
he
dealing
doesn't,
with so much, right? And it's not like you ever say it in a hateful or spiteful way, right? It's just like, okay, it's just the way it is. Like,
right.
you know?
Upon finding out that he's a high needs baby, I
Mm-hmm.
was able to find a community of people who had high needs kids. And that
Right.
changed everything.
Oh,
Instead of
for
the
sure.
judgment, you've got people who are like, no, no, been there, done that. You want to hoist your glass of wine at the end of the day? Because I'm right there with you.
Right.
They are supportive, they are respectful, they don't tell you it's your fault. They understand this is just your kid. And there are
Mm-hmm.
days that is going to be really goddamn hard, like
Oh, for
really,
sure.
really hard. And it's just parenting your kid. That's just the way they are.
Yeah, it is. Being a parent, I think, is the most challenging thing I have ever done and probably ever will do. It is the most rewarding thing. It doesn't always feel like it in the moment. At the end of the day, I mean, you are temporarily in care of these little beings, right? These little human
Mm-hmm.
beings. And it's the most incredible thing you'll ever witness. But not every single moment is incredible, you know? Like, there are a lot of moments that aren't incredible, but the big picture, it's pretty amazing.
Right. That is my reminder to myself on a regular
Hmm.
basis that this is not forever. This is a phase and we
18
will
years to life.
it's a phase. He will grow out of this phase and
Yeah.
move into a brand new, more annoying phase.
It'll
But
be
it's
different
just
though.
it'll be a different pain in my
Yeah.
butt. It's still a pain in my butt, but a new and different kind of pain in my butt.
Right.
But it also gives me more sympathy for my own mother. And
Yes.
like I found that before having kids, I felt a lot of frustration and resentment
Hmm.
towards my mother for the choices that she made in parenting.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying she made the right choices. This is the thing I've come to understand is that parents are just doing their best with what they have.
For sure.
whatever, and without the research and the reading and all that, you're doing the best with what you've got, usually with how you were parented, because that's the model that you are
Right.
familiar with. And that's that generational trauma, right? Where
Hmm.
however we were parented tends to be the model that we display with our own children,
Right.
because that's what we know, it's what we have.
Yeah, you can't use a tool you don't know exists, right?
Right, exactly. So it helps me to understand that my mother did her best.
Hmm.
Even if I disagree with a lot of choices she made,
Right.
she did her best with what was available to her,
For sure.
and where she was in her own life and her own trauma that she
Hmm.
was willing or unwilling to unpack and deal with. She did what she could with what she had. And
Right.
I've had to learn to come to peace with that and say, yeah, I've got a lot of trauma that I have to fix because of the choices that she made. But she did her best with what she had. It's not
For sure.
excusing, like, I want to make it clear to the viewers and listeners who are listening, I'm not excusing causing harm to your child. I'm not excusing that, you
Absolutely
know
not.
but being aware that most people are making these choices not from an informed position of being able to step back and look at it and say, okay, how much of this is my own stuff and how much of this is not. Most people
Hmm.
are not in a position to do that and make better choices. And that's why, folks, we are doing the work. This is why we do the work. This is why we do the self-healing
Uh,
work, so that we stop this pattern of parenting in toxic, harmful, damaging
mhm.
ways to our child, so that they are not burdened with these traumas moving into raising their own children down the line.
For sure. Yeah. At the end of the day, we really are doing the best that we can. And me and my husband always joke about if at the end of the day you don't question whether or not you're doing it right or just messing up your kids completely, you probably don't care, right? Like if you're sitting
Mm-hmm.
down at the end of the day and you're like, I'm the most amazing parent in the world. And you know what? There probably are some amazing parents that get every win and are doing it perfectly, but I'm not that parent.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm constantly messing up. And that has a lot to do with the pressure that I place on myself, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of areas of my life. But I guess you just want to give your kids the best chance possible.
Mm-hmm.
And while trying to heal all of your stuff and learn and grow through all of it, it's hard.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, is it ever? I just try to remind myself the end of the line is
Hmm.
I am raising a human being
Yep.
who is going to go out into the world like every other human being you meet out
Hmm.
in the world. And every time you meet some pain in the butt person who's disrespectful, rude, entitled, they were raised with those ideals. They were
Right.
raised thinking that that was okay. And
Hmm.
I don't want my child to be one of those people. I don't want him to be out there in the world, teenager, adult, doesn't matter. I don't want him out there thinking that he is above everyone else. He is just
Entitled to things.
right. He's a person like everyone else. And I want him to
Right.
understand everybody else is a person as well. They have
Hmm.
thoughts, they have feelings, they have ideas, they have issues, they have all these things just like you. So
Well, and
I,
that's, oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's finding the balance too, right? Because you want your children now to know that everybody's a human, have that respect for people, but also not be a pushover, right? You
Yeah.
want them to know how to work hard, but also understand that you don't have to work yourself silly to enjoy your life either, right? Like you
Right.
don't have to put in 90 hours a week to find joy. It comes from other things other than just material
Right.
happiness. Um, but that we never know somebody else's story either, right? So finding that balance, yeah, raising good humans, right? And as a parent, you kind of just want to be your kid's friend sometimes, but it's
Hmm.
not our job to just be their friend all the time. You have to instill these values and find, appropriate ways to learn lessons and things like that, right?
Right. Right. I will say it is it is, as you said, it's challenging when you're
Mhm.
also working through your own trauma and
Yep.
realizing things in you that are triggered in your children
Hmm.
through your children's behavior, your own issues that you haven't resolved yet, that
Right.
are running under the surface, that are affecting your choices, your behaviors, your reactions. All the more important why emotional regulation is part of it. Because
Absolutely.
as we've mentioned before, many of us who are, I don't know if we want to call it like later millennials or earlier millennials, however that falls in
Hmm.
the early millennial category to late or above into Gen
If you
X,
remember floppy disks, then that's your generation.
then you generally don't have emotional regulation. So
Right.
I see that a lot on the parenting boards, a lot of parents who are mostly just raging, mostly
Yeah.
just losing their temper and raging, and not, a lot of them are asking for help, but then you're seeing in the responses, or you're seeing even in their asking for help, they don't have emotional regulation. And the biggest problem is their kids are triggering them, and
Right.
then they're reacting because they don't know how to regulate their own emotions. Therefore, they have a hard time teaching their children to
How to
regulate their
regulate.
emotions.
For sure. Well, that's I was gonna say something here. What was it? The mom brain is kicking in. Oh man. I lost it for now. That's okay. It'll come
That's
back
okay, it'll
eventually.
come back.
um,
I know I've had to learn the emotional regulation, and it has
yes.
been hard,
Hmm.
like truly hard. I didn't
For sure.
realize how unregulated my emotions were
Hmm.
until I started working to get my child to regulate his
Right.
emotions. And I'm realizing, oh, well, I'm not doing those things at all.
No. Okay. It finally came back. Um, you were talking about how, some people just go into a rage and it's very reactionary, right? How we were raised as kids, some of us, things like yelling was very normal, a very commonplace, right? Like, growing up in the generation where, I just want you to listen to me and do it the way I'm asking you to. And I don't care if you think you have a different way, just do it this way. I know it works, it's efficient, and that's it. Like, that's the end of the conversation, right? um, and now trying to raise kids knowing full well that they're little humans and you're not just programming someone to do something the way you want, right? Having that
Right.
leeway. Like, you want a kid that can think for themselves, has respect, can work hard, but figures out what works for them as well, right? Sure. Would it be easier if my kid just did exactly what I said when I said it? I believe it probably would be, for sure. Is that the way it works? No. And you also don't want to break their spirit, right? You want them to
Mhm.
be, their own human, their own being.
And solve their own problems
Absolutely.
through whatever method they need to figure out to solve
Right?
their problem. Yeah, I'm that has been a challenge. That has been my mom challenge, is to help my child learn those things,
Hmm.
learn and understand how to solve his own problems. And like teaching him, just because one solution didn't work doesn't
Right.
mean that there aren't other solutions to try.
Right.
There are always different ways to get to the same outcome. And that's
Hmm.
something that I've had to let go of control on, saying this is how I want it done, but to say, okay, I don't care how you get to the outcome. This is the outcome I want. You may
Right.
choose whatever method you want to get you there, so long as you get there. It doesn't have to
Right.
be exactly A to B to C the way that I have said it has to be done.
Hmm.
If you want to do A to C to B to D, I don't care, as long as you get to the outcome
Right.
that is expected, as long as your room is clean. I don't care how you go about getting your room clean, so long as when it's done, the room is clean.
Right.
Use whatever method you like. I don't care, but it needs to be clean.
Hmm.
Instead of, well, you have to put away the clothes first, then you have to
Yep.
put away this, then you have to do this. Just letting go of control and letting him do it whatever way he needs to do to
Right.
get to the outcome, which is not how my mother raised me.
No, nor mine. Uh, but like you said before, they were just doing the best they could, right? And we are now taking on that role of doing the best we can. And without the village, without the people to turn to ask, right? Like we rely on social media and the moms boards, and it can be deterring when there is so much judgment. And then when you find the right group, it's like you said, it's a game changer for
Hmm.
sure. But it takes a lot of energy, right? And
Yes.
then that mom guilt kicks in. It's like, okay, I'm on my phone all this time. Yes, I'm reading about how to, you know, help take care of my children the best way possible. But you're like, now I feel guilty because I'm on my phone. Well, I'm trying to take care of my kid. That whole mom guilt just layers in, and it's a great thing.
It's so harsh. It's so harsh because we want so badly to do a good job,
Right?
but you don't know. And the thing is, you won't know if you've done a good job until they're a little bit older and you can start to see the building blocks you've put into place starting to show when you see them doing things
Damage
that you
assessment. No.
when I see my kid do something kind for someone else and I hear him repeat something that I've taught him, and I'm like, oh my God, he did listen. He
Right?
was listening.
I know. Well, and it's funny how some days all of the lessons you've been trying to instill in them just one day click. It's like everything just clicks into place in one day. You're like, we've been going over this for like 6 weeks, 6 months, like, and now it's just all of a sudden it's all fallen into place. Like, it's great.
Right.
But you're also not told that some kids take longer to want to learn how to read or sing the alphabet, right? And some kids
Mm-hmm.
would rather, just be super hands on and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, where do you learn this stuff from, right? Like, where's the manual? Where's the book?
Even if there was a manual, it wouldn't matter because it'd be different for every single darn kid.
Right? Just a
I will
customized one for every child.
right. I will say that the spirited group after high needs, they
Hmm.
move into spirited toddlers. That's after I grouped in the high needs group. Then they were like, okay, so once they get into toddler stage, they move out of
Hmm.
high needs babies into spirited children, which led me
Okay.
to a book called How to Raise Your Spirited Child,
Nice.
which had a lot of great tips in it. I've joined the Facebook group for that as well. And a lot of moms will get on there and say, oh my God, you ladies are my lifeline, because
Right.
they'll be on other mom groups and there's so much damn judgment, particularly for people who don't have spirited kids.
Hmm.
They don't understand that these children are incredibly strong willed. Like,
Right.
you can't get them to do something by force because they will just absolutely flat out refuse. And like,
Right.
what are you going to do? Move them like a puppet and make them do it? Like,
Yeah, certain things aren't an option, right? Like crying it out isn't an option.
mhm.
Like,
My kid would
putting
cry
them down
until
to
he
sleep,
threw up. He would
right?
cry
And
until he threw up on himself. And that would be, well, just let him cry it out. I'm like, no, you don't understand.
yeah, you
In
can't.
your idea, he'll cry until he settles down.
Right.
That he won't. He'll just keep going until he throws up on himself. Then I'm concerned he's going to choke on vomit.
Right. Then yeah, it's become physically ill at that point. It's not just a
Yeah.
mindset, right? Pardon me.
It's this the spirited group I found was incredibly beneficial
Hmm.
in just learning to say, okay, so this is who my kid is. So I
Right.
have to find a creative way around getting done what I need to get done, because the straight do it this way won't work. Once they dig their heels in, they're not doing it. And there's, I mean, what are you going to do? You could go back to the physical punishment that happened in the previous generations, where you'll
Hmm.
do it unless you want me to hurt you, and threats of violence. But
Right.
that's not going to get you a healthy, happy kid that you want.
Yeah,
Your
parenting in
end
fear,
goal.
right, is not the end goal. Like, do I want my child to respect me? Yes, but I don't want my child to fear me or fear a physical consequence, right? Like, that's
Right.
not how I want to parent. And there are so many choices for parenting. Like, we very much do the attachment style parenting. So we are lucky enough to breastfeed. And then we do baby wearing. I haven't quite gotten there with my daughter yet, but I did a lot more of that with my son when he was a baby. And we do co-sleeping as well. It's just what works for us. It gives
Hmm.
me the chance for the most amount of sleep without having to leave bed or
Yes.
anything. And yes, she doesn't want to be put down for naps, and that's okay right now. She's 4 months old, and it's been a nice dose of slowing down while everything is happening, right? Everything's closed. You can't go anywhere anyway. Um, But our parenting style probably wouldn't work for a lot of other people that, you know, and a lot of other kids, right? High spirited children, or just, parents that like to cuddle their kids. This is a great option. It's a great option for me so I can get as much sleep as possible.
Yep.
Um, and it works well with, I don't know, I just feel like it's the right way for us. And that's
Hmm.
all that really matters when it comes down to it, right? And finding that way for you and your children, right? Like your high
Hmm.
spirited children. A lot of parents won't understand that because they don't experience that, but really being able to find your tribe and your group of people that, has like-minded ideals is huge, and social media is a really great option for that. But
Hmm.
I do miss the in-person groups right now.
Right. Although I have to say, in our city, I haven't found a group of
Hmm.
parents who specifically have spirited kids.
Right.
So I found when I was engaging with other groups, because my child is so wild, because that's just who he
Hmm.
is. He's very high energy, very high spirited, talks
Yep.
very fast, like his mama. Like he's just a very intense personality, which
Right.
is wonderful. And when he's an adult, he's going to be an amazing adult that's going to
Mhm.
serve. I don't know what he's going to do with his life, but it's going to be probably something amazing,
It's gonna
because
be great.
mediocre is not his strong
Hmm.
suit. Everything is go big or go home with this
Right.
kid. But other kids don't get that, especially kids who are not spirited.
Hmm.
He comes off as very, very intense
Right.
to these
Just a
parents
lot.
and the
Yeah.
kids. And they don't, I find other parents, they don't get that. And they'll tell me, well, have you tried putting him on this? Have you tried putting him on that? And I'm like, this is just who he is.
Right.
He's just an intense person. He's got a lot to share. He loves to
Hmm.
tell stories. He loves to just be really into everything. And it's just,
Right.
that's who he is. Just
Well,
like I am who I am.
right. And he's happy and healthy. Why does he need to be put on something?
Right.
Some kids just need a lot more outdoor activity, a lot more exercise, um and things like that. Like our son too, we put him in a private school in September, because it was smaller class sizes. It
Hmm.
was like a based off the one room schoolhouse, from JK to grade 8. We're all sharing the same space,
Hmm.
15 kids max. Huge emphasis on being outside as much as possible, playing in the mud as much as possible, fresh air all the time, because we knew if we put him into a normal school system like the Catholic or public school board, right, he probably wouldn't thrive from going and playing outside for 8 hours a day. Then he'd have to be at a desk for long
Hmm.
periods of time. It just wasn't something that we thought would help him thrive, right?
Hmm.
But he's very much the same. He's extremely confident in his body and his capabilities. He will balance on things that maybe he shouldn't, but he knows the limits of his body, and he will
Hmm.
jump off from playground equipment at heights that a lot of other kids won't, because he knows that he'll be fine.
Hmm.
And he shakes it off and he says he's tough and strong and he's good to go. So he does that stuff. But you're right. There is a lot, um, it feels like there's a lot of underlying judgment when it comes to parents. And I don't know if that's something that parents are putting out there so much as something that we're just inherently perceiving because we're so afraid of how we're raising our children.
Hmm. No, I hear that. I, I do see some parents where they're like, no, you can't climb up the slide. My kid will climb up the slide. It's just
Mhm.
like your kid. He's very confident in his body. I know when he
Right.
was small, he was jumping off the basement stairs at his papa's house. And his cousin, who was not as confident in his body, was trying to mimic him and being
Mhm.
told, no, you can't. And I had to tell him, okay, buddy, I know you can jump 5 stairs up,
Right.
but your cousin cannot. So can you try only 3, just
Right.
so that your cousin who wants to do it with you isn't going to, because he can't do 5, but he wants to because you want to.
Right.
So can you maybe dial that back a bit so that you're not leaving him out?
Mhm.
Because I know my kid will jump from ridiculous heights too. He will do all these amazing, crazy things where I'm like, ugh, my heart's in my throat. And I'm like,
Of
okay,
course.
okay, I just got to trust you. I got to trust that
Right.
that you'll be okay. You're not going to break anything, that you understand your body enough to do these things. Climb up a slide. And I got parents at the playground going, no, you only go down the slide to their kids. And I'm just like, okay, that puts a bit of an awkward position because my kid
Right.
is fully capable of going up and going down. The only thing I remind him is if people are coming down, you have to wait. You
Hmm.
have to be respectful of other kids on the playground. Let them go down and then you can climb
Right.
up. Don't stop people from being able to go down and take over the slide for yourself. But if you want to climb up it, that's fine. I don't mind.
Right.
Other parents are like, no, 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 you can't do that. That's not the rules of the playground. And I'm like,
But it's a playground.
it's a playground. Just let them play.
But then that harkens back too to how we were raised, right? Like it was for me, it's more of a rigid, set of rules and constructs that you have to just follow. Like there's no leeway.
Mm-hmm.
Slides are to go down and you only ever go down a slide. It's like, but why? Like it's a playground.
Right.
I'm figuring things out. I'm having fun. Like when I'm older and I'm working for a company and I have to follow their rules all the time, fine. But like while I'm a kid, why?
Right.
You
And I
know?
mean, hopefully that changes too as we're getting more,
Absolutely.
that
Yes.
we end up, society changes along with that of just understanding that, like Google, like different places like that, that
Mhm.
allow their employees to have a little more freedom and space
Right.
to develop creativity without the limits and rules of this is how it has to be done, which stifles creativity,
Hmm.
stifles choices and ideas. We want those choices and ideas to come forth. And I think that's why Google does that. And other companies are starting to follow suit where you have a little bit more freedom. And I know older Gen Xers roll their eyes at millennials over that. Oh, you darn millennials just doing all these weird things. But I do think it does allow for a more creative environment where ideas flow better because you're not limited to this is the only way that it can be done because I've said this is the only way it can be done.
Absolutely.
It's yeah.
Well, we're just trying to figure out a better way, right? It's not like we're standing here saying, "Oh, our parents completely messed us up," and "Oh, everybody else did it wrong." It's we're trying to pick the pieces that worked well and try and build a way that can work better, right? For
Right.
everyone. It's such a task to take on when you sit back and you're like, I'm helping to raise the next generation.
Right.
And regardless of whether you have kids or not, you're around kids or they see you out in the street, like it's interesting what they pick up on. Like it's just
Mhm.
everything.
Mhm. They are truly sponges. Like
They are.
truly sponges. They soak it all in. And
Yes.
motherhood is such a, as you said before, it's the most challenging job I have ever had, the most important job I have ever had. Rewarding, it is a very rewarding job, especially like you said, when you see them starting to implement the things that you've taught them and you're like,
Right.
oh, hey, look at that. I love seeing my son achieve things. I love watching him achieve things. When I've seen him work hard at something and not do well and finally get it, it's his achievements become my achievements. I'm so proud of him for that perseverance. And like that's the thing about a spirited child, they are very big on perseverance, particularly when you've told them no to something. They
Hmm.
will keep pushing to find a way. They want to see, can they find a workaround
Right.
to get what they want, which right now parenting is difficult,
Hmm.
incredibly difficult when your child just won't listen and they want to try to find a workaround. But I also recognize that is a valuable skill moving into
Absolutely.
living in the world. That if one way doesn't find you the solution that you want, find a workaround, find
Hmm.
another way to get to the solution that you're aiming for. If one method isn't going to work for you, that perseverance is awesome, but not right now.
And depending on the day, it's like, how much willpower do I have left? And does my kid know how much willpower I have left and how many more asks it's going to take for me to give in? Like,
Right? That's where those boundaries come in. That has been a recent lesson of mine. has been
yes.
I've been working very hard on that because boundaries were not something that were honored in my childhood. I was not taught boundaries. Boundaries were not honored
Mhm.
in my childhood. I was not allowed to have, in my family, there's a lot of enmeshment. So there was
Right.
not a lot of freedom to have your own thoughts, your own ideas, your own limits. It
Hmm.
was whatever you were told you were allowed to have. So
Right.
boundaries are a tricky subject for me. They're an area that I'm still trying to understand and still trying to implement. Um, and that's it's hard to do that with my child and set boundaries because
For sure.
my boundaries aren't real strong. So I'm still trying to learn how
Right.
to say to him, this is the limit, and to still keep that boundary and not have him chip away at it until I just let it drop because
Right.
I just can't handle it that day.
Well, and then with boundaries too, like bodily autonomy is something that as kids we didn't have a lot of either. It was if this aunt wants a hug, you give her a hug. If
Right.
this, you know, if like anything, yeah, hugs and kisses were just something that was an expectation. It wasn't, do you want to give someone a hug or a kiss, right? It's like,
You were
okay,
expected
they're,
to.
yeah, your aunt and uncle are leaving, give them hugs and kisses. It's not, I don't want to right now. Like I'll say I love you and goodbye, but
Hmm.
having bodily autonomy is one thing and another boundary, right? And being able to recognize that. And when someone says, like the whole consent thing, right? Like when someone says no, they mean no, whether that be tickling or, holding your hand or like anything, right?
Hmm.
Like learning those lessons now for
Hmm.
later on in life are very important and valuable.
We just had this talk like bedtime like 2 days ago. Because my kid wants to touch my belly. Like I don't
Yeah.
know, he's got a weird fixation with that. He just wants to touch my belly. And I'm not
Hmm.
real comfortable with him lifting my shirt to touch my belly,
Right.
especially since like during the pandemic, I generally go braless because
Mhm.
I'm at home. So, and I'm like, I'm not comfortable with you lifting my shirt. That makes me feel uncomfortable. But we had to have this talk like 2 nights ago where I
Right.
absolutely said, listen, this is very important. I need
Mhm.
you to understand this. Your body belongs to you, and you
Right.
are allowed to tell people how they can and cannot touch it, whether you're allowing them to touch it or not, or how you want them to touch you. But I have the same rights as well. And I
Absolutely.
don't want you lifting my shirt I know it's just my belly, but
Mhm.
if I'm not giving permission for you to touch my belly and to put your head on it and to give kisses to it and all the stuff that you want to do, if I'm telling you that I'm uncomfortable with that, then you have to respect that. And he's
Right.
like, but why? I'm like, because buddy, this is something very important going into the world. You have to understand that everyone else has the right to decide how
Mhm.
they want their body to be touched, but so do you. If you don't want someone touching you in a certain way, if you don't want somebody doing something to you, you are allowed to say, no, I don't want that. I don't
Right.
like that. And I mean, he's 6. I know that like it's you're teaching it from very early, and I know it's going to
Mhm.
take a while to really sink in, but there's an importance to that because I don't want him to be that kind of adult that doesn't respect a no,
Right.
regardless of what gender he ends up being interested in. Although I'm pretty sure he's heterosexual. There's there's enough evidence to make me believe that he's hetero.
Plenty of time to figure that out.
But regardless, I don't want that to be a thing where I have to worry about him not respecting
Mhm.
somebody's autonomy. I don't, I've had to explain to him he loves to touch his private parts because that's the age. And I'm like, buddy,
The age, yes.
private.
That's a bedroom or bathroom
Yes.
activity just for yourself, right? Like
And
you have,
alone.
yeah. Well, that's what I mean. But yeah, it's just for you. Like you don't do that in the living room. We're not talking about like doing this at the kitchen table. Like that is something just for you. You do by yourself in your
Right.
room or the bathroom and not having shame around it too, right? Like that
Right.
was, a big thing growing up is those things were very shameful. And especially if you're raised by a Catholic family, right? Like extremely shameful and you're going to be smited. And now you grow up fearing your sexuality and
Right.
sex in general.
Which is a
And
whole brand
right,
new drama.
a whole new thing. But yeah, having these conversations with your kids, it's all new territory.
Yeah. And it's explained to him alone because we'll sit there at bedtime reading while he's pulling. I'm like, dude, I'm right here.
Right. Yeah. Not while
Can
I'm here.
when you're alone,
Mhm.
I don't care if you want to touch your body. It belongs to you. It is your
Right.
body. You can touch it any way you want to. But private parts are touched when you are alone
Right.
rather than
Privately.
when other people are there. And he asked me one day, he's like, why? And I'm like, well, understand that this is a rule that also applies to grown-ups.
Right.
You may not touch your private parts in a space with other people when
Right.
they have not given permission to be present for that.
Right.
And he's like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, just understand that grown-ups follow the same rules. Okay. Private parts
Yes.
are touched in private, and you can't just be next to somebody pulling on your private parts while they're hanging out with you. Like it's just not
Mm.
acceptable. It's not okay. They did not consent to being in that space with you. Like you
It's a
can't do
good
that.
lesson to learn young.
We don't need any more of those CK Lewis's out there. You do your thing, but like not just doing that thing around other people when they haven't said that's cool. Like
Right. Yeah. Boundaries. Boundaries.
boundaries. So I wanted to talk a bit about just the joy of being a mom, because we've talked about some of the challenges and some of the things
Yes.
that that involve parenting, involve raising children, but
Hmm.
we haven't talked about the reward that comes along with it, because it's very hard work. It's very, very hard work where you're
Right.
constantly trying to make sure that you have the information that you need. You're trying to make sure that you're giving the information. Like you said, you're also working through your own traumas
Right.
to be your healthiest version and your healthiest self, to come from a good place.
Hmm.
But all that aside, it is a joy to have kids. It is hard,
It
but it
is.
truly is joyful.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, it's like when they say your kid's awake, all you want is for them to be asleep, but as soon as they fall asleep, you're like, I just want you to wake up so I can spend time with you, right?
Right.
Um, no, it is the best thing I have ever done. The most challenging, but it is the best thing. Like, it really has changed my perspective on a lot of things in life, and my husband's as well, right? Like, he will take random days off of work just so that we can all sleep in the morning, climb into the bed together and cuddle and talk and hang out and stuff like that. And there's nothing that beats that. Money can't buy anything that feels quite like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's incredible. Like you said, when they start picking up on the lessons you're teaching them, but also when they develop their own personality, right? When there's this one thing that they do constantly, like our son will say, so that's interesting, eh? Like about anything, talking about anything. He'll ask why something, works the way it does, and you'll tell him, and he's like, oh, that's interesting, eh? And it's like, yes, it is. And I don't know
Isn't it
where
so
you got that
funny?
from. Yeah,
It's
he
so
is.
funny. I love that, and I love when you start hearing your phrases come out of their
Oh,
mouth,
goodness. The good and the bad
the
ones.
good and the bad.
For a while when so my husband is not my son's biological father.
Mm-hmm.
He is very much dad and is called dad and that, but when he first started coming around, I had been saying fuck sakes a lot
Oh
in the
boy.
house, just like under my breath and stuff like
Right.
that. And my son picked that up
Oh
and
no.
knew how to use it properly, which is hard to be upset about, right?
Right.
But I'm like, I definitely need to watch that phrasing. And my husband thought it was the most hilarious thing. This
I have a
like
similar
3-year old.
story. I have a similar story to before he was really saying a lot of phrases, we would
Right.
drop the F bomb from time to time as
Hmm.
well. And he doesn't like the bathroom fan. It's got a separate thing that he doesn't like the bathroom fan.
Right.
Obviously, the purpose of the bathroom fan is so that whoever does their business in there, the whole house doesn't have to smell.
Exactly.
So the fan is left on usually
Courtesy
for about,
fan.
right. It's
Yeah.
left on maybe like 5-10 minutes or so after the person has exited the bathroom to help
Hmm.
eliminate the odor. My kid will go in there after someone, and he walked in, he must have been like maybe the same thing, about three, I think, two and a half or
Right.
three. And he walks in and the fan is on, and he goes and he hits the switch to the fan. He goes, who left this fucking thing on? And I wanted to be super mad because he threw out the F word, but I'm like, but you used it right. Like you
Right.
didn't just throw a word in there just to throw it in there to
Yeah.
say that you used it. You used it in correct usage in that sentence to describe the fan that was left on. I, we still encourage our phrasing is we like, listen, there are grown-up words and there are
Right.
kids words. And when
Hmm.
you are a grown-up, you may use these words, but as long as you
Absolutely.
are a kid, you may not use these words. But to hear him
That's
say it,
funny.
we're like, okay, stop laughing, stop laughing. He can't see you laughing. Don't let him think that it's funny, because then it encourages it.
It does. But then you also don't want to make a huge deal of it because oh, another one that has been recently is what the hell, right? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
you can say what the heck, that's
Yep.
fine. Um but he's like, so I can't say what the hell. And it's like, no, you can't say that. So he'll say, oh, what the heck? And he's like, I almost said what the hell, but I didn't. And it's like, but you just did. Like,
Ah, yeah, yeah. They're creative workarounds just to be able to say that.
well, that's it, right? Just that's one of the joys of parenting, I think, is to see how their brains work. It is so interesting and inspiring and frustrating and incredible. Like it's just a whole mix of emotions in one. It's like,
Right.
why would you do it like that? Like that's so creative for lack of a better word, but like what were you thinking? Like how did you get from point A to W? Like where was that? Like
I have this little book that I write down funny things that he says, and I've started
mhm,
it from when he was little, and I write down some of the most entertaining ones. One of my favorite ones is I think he was maybe around 2 or so, and
mhm.
he discovered he had a hole in his butt. So
Okay.
he's in the bath and he's like, "Mom, did you know there's a hole in my butt?"
It's like,
Yeah.
yes, son, there's also a crack.
And then he goes, so he's sticking his finger in his butthole. And I'm like, okay. So I'm like, dude, we don't stick our finger in our butthole. And he goes, can you stick your finger in my butthole? I'm like, no, no, I'm not doing, but I wrote that down. It was because he specifically said, can
Can you?
you do
It's like, okay, I can't, but can you? No, no, I'm not doing that.
Or then there was another one I wrote down. Oh, he was still in diapers when he did
Mhm,
this. And so he found a hole in his sock. So there was a time where he's like, there's a hole in my sock. And the hole got bigger and bigger and
mhm.
bigger and bigger until bam, my toe came out of it. So he's like a couple days later, he's wearing a diaper and he finds a little hole in the outside of the diaper. And he goes, there's a hole in my diaper. Maybe it'll get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until bam, my penis falls out. Like,
Little did
dude,
he know when he got older, there was special underwear for that.
like it just, he says some of the most amazing, interesting, funny things. And I
Mhm,
write this stuff down. And that is part of the joy of parenthood is like there's so much frustration, but there's these moments that are just gold, that are just absolutely hilarious.
yeah, pure joy.
Like we spend a lot of time laughing. Like when we're all in good moods and
Mhm.
nobody's like in a, whatever mood, or
Yeah.
everybody's been fed, everybody's slept well,
Yes. Yeah.
everybody's triggers are low. It's just funny. Like the kid is he does the most entertaining things. Of all things, the kid likes
Mhm.
Kiss. I'm not a Kiss fan. Neither is my husband. It's not like I
It
don't like
started
them,
with
but they're,
Led Zeppelin.
well, actually, if I'm honest, it started with Scooby Doo.
Oh.
Thanks, Scooby Doo, Kiss. There's an entire Scooby Doo movie
Mhm.
with like the Kiss members, and it's just more merchandising from Kiss.
Right.
But it has like the songs in it. It's all like the Scooby Gang and all that. So it's like his favorite movie. So now all he wants to listen to is "I Was Made for Loving You" by Kiss. And he
That's
sings it.
incredible.
You hear him in his room going, "I was made for loving you, baby." And I'm like, I never would have guessed before I had my kid that my 6-year-old would be sitting in his bedroom singing "I Was Made for Loving You" by Kiss on top of his lungs. Like, who would have guessed
Oh,
that?
that's amazing.
He's very funny. We also found the movie Trolls World Tour.
Mhm.
We watched that with them just to introduce concepts of music.
Right.
Turns out my kid likes rock. Like,
Well, that's yeah. Pardon me. Ours does too. We listen to pretty much every genre of music out there.
mhm.
So we typically have music playing in the house, but yeah, the best thing is driving him to school in the morning or going anywhere now with him in the truck, the music on. He sits there in like his booster seat with his one leg on top of his knee, just like foot tapping away and just like looking out the window. And it's like, how are you like the coolest kid just chilling to music and like I'm your parent? Like, how did this happen? Like, I definitely
He's
was not like this as a kid.
right. Like I look at memes too that talk about like this is what I looked like when I was 7, and this is what
Right.
my 7-year-old is like. And I think that comes back to what we talked about before with giving our children more freedom and autonomy to just be
Right.
their genuine selves instead of telling them this is what you have to like because this is what I like. Giving
Right.
them that full freedom to, okay, what do you like? What music do you want to listen to? What
Yeah.
makes you enjoy music? My kid
What?
will also listen to pop.
Yeah.
He's got a big thing for Let It Go from Frozen. I wouldn't have
Well,
expected a boy was gonna, but
everybody does.
he's that one he likes and he'll sing along to, and he likes the kid bop. We listen to a lot of
Yeah.
kids bop in our home. I'm not thrilled on some of the choices of
Yeah.
kids bop versions of songs where I'm like, I don't know if that's a healthy song for kids to be repeating, even if you've changed some of the lyrics.
Right.
It's still the concept of the song I don't think
Mm-hmm.
is child appropriate. But
Appropriate. Right.
generally speaking, they tend to pick songs that are reasonable for kids. He
Mm-hmm.
likes some of those, but rock is his thing. His dad's a big fan of heavy rock, heavy metal. He's
Nice.
big in there. He's like, can we listen to some? We get in the car. He's like, can we listen to some rock? And he says like that rock. Like, dude, you are very interesting. You are a very interesting person,
I love the fashion choices always. I'm wondering
right?
what outfit he'll come down in every day, right? He's a big fan of button-ups, suspenders, and jeans. Right now it's shorts because
Really?
he's like, it's warm enough. We can wear shorts all the time. But yeah, he loves a good like flannel button-up and suspenders and
Wow.
jeans. Yeah. It's like,
Very stylish.
yeah, I know. It's like again, when I was your age, I did not have fashion. I don't even know if I still have fashion figured out, honestly. But this kid at 5 seems to.
Wow. My kids mostly, I think he picked out a long, he loves long sleeve, but he'll
Mhm.
put long sleeve with shorts. And I'm like, why wouldn't you just put a t-shirt? And he'll say, maybe you should change your clothes. No, this is what I want to wear. Are you sure this is what you
Right.
want to wear? Yes, this is what I want to wear.
Okay.
Okay. So he'll put on like a gray long sleeve shirt and then like gray sweatpants. And then
Mhm.
like his dad's mentioned a few times, you look like you're wearing pajamas because they're all the same shade of gray. And he's like, it's okay. I like it. And he he puts his little pose and I'm like, dude, you are a laugh and a half. Like he's funny. He's a
Mhm.
very funny person. He comes up with some funny stuff. He's got the most amazing stories. Sometimes you're like, okay, can you wrap it up? Like, can
Yeah.
you,
Oh yeah.
can you finish? We've gone on 5 tangents while you told me about this one thing. Can you like round it back around to what you
Every
were
detail is
originally
important,
saying?
okay?
He's funny. Like my kid is very creative. He's very funny. I've said it before, but he's honest to God, I think he's smarter at 6 than I was even remotely. Like he's so smart,
Mhm.
so incredibly, he connects to stuff, STEM stuff. He's all about like building. He loves to build these amazing Lego creations. And he's like,
Mhm.
Mom, build Legos with me. And I'm like, I don't have that level of creativity. Like
Yeah.
you come up with the most amazing things. And I'm like, okay, we're gonna build a square house with
And drive
with a
something
square.
into it.
Like he's sitting there, he's like, I built this robot with this laser.
Right?
And then I'm like, how did you like he just visualizes that and then builds these
Mhm.
amazing things. And I'm like, how are you that creative? Because I am not. I try to be. And I'm sitting there going, what if I did this brick like
A
this? And
simple
it's not
tower. I feel very much the same way too. Our son is very much into Lego as well, and my favorite is like the names he gives it now. It's like this is the C93289110. And I'm like, okay. He's like, and these wheels can move here, and it can be a boat and a house in one, and this is a wing that you can put it on and it'll fly. It's like, wow. It's like there's a lot happening there. But you're right. Yeah, the creativity is wild. And I think it's cool being a parent and getting to get back in touch with that side of yourself, right? Because
mm-hmm,
you lose a lot of the opportunity for creativity sometimes. So it's,
mm-hmm.
yeah,
I
being able to
agree.
just have fun.
I agree very much. Like I'm not so into the Lego. I can, I can't get into that level of creativity.
Right.
But I mean, we have other things that we do that with. And I'm like, you know
Absolutely.
what? Let's do art. Let's pull out our paints. Let's paint a picture. And he paints some of the craziest stuff where I'm like, okay, what is that? That's a Spinosaurus and it's attacking a T-Rex. And over here is a Triceratops. And over here is a Stegosaurus. And the Stegosaurus is yelling at the Spinosaurus, but the Spinosaurus is going raw. And I'm like, that's what you got out of these. Okay, that's a wow. I'm sure his teacher finds it entertaining too, because he'll I'll videotape some of the stuff for the packages to
Right.
send to his teacher. And he goes on a long thing. And I'm like, dude, a 5-minute video is very hard to upload to your teacher. Like
Right.
it takes a lot of time to upload five
Yep.
minutes to your teacher. Can we try to keep it within like 30 seconds to try to explain whatever it is that you painted for her? If you could just explain it in like 30 seconds. No, he
Nope.
he had an assignment of a shamrock outline, and she asked him to put stickers in it and fill it in with stickers. So he fills it in with
Right.
Star Wars stickers
Of
because we're
course.
big Star Wars fans in our house. So he fills it in with Star Wars stickers, and then he's telling him like, okay, so explain to her what you did, and I'll film you, and you go ahead and explain it. It was a 5-minute video about how well Kylo Ren did this, and you she boop boop pew, and all the different lightsabers, and the explosions here, and that's an explosion here, and then the good guys were over here, and the stormtroopers did this, and I'm like, a couple times I'm like, oh, that was really interesting. It's like, wait, I'm not done.
Trying to gently wrap it up. Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, okay, buddy, your teacher, I'm sure it's interesting to her, but she's got 30 kids in her class. Can
For
you
sure.
like squeeze it down? Like just sell it just
Just
real short.
condense it a little. It's
Just
okay.
a little bit.
It's okay.
But I mean, look at his mother. So yeah,
Great
he gets
mother.
it honest.
No.
Being a mom is amazing and hard and wonderful. And I just, like you said, it's watching how they develop, the thoughts they come up with, seeing a human being grow from this little baby that can't do anything on its own to being a more self-sufficient child. My kid,
Right.
he he eats waffles frozen. It's he's so
It's
strange
refreshing.
sometimes. Right? He won't if you toast them, he won't eat them.
Hmm.
Like he likes Eggo waffles
Right.
out of the freezer, but he won't let you toast it. He doesn't want anything on it. He just wants it frozen directly out of the freezer and eats it frozen. And I'm like, okay, okay.
Okay.
You can reach the freezer. It's on the bottom. If that means we're now at the stage where he's getting up on his own.
Mhm.
And so I don't have to get up with him to feed him
Nice.
and create
Yeah.
breakfast for him. He just gets up. He goes to the bathroom. He goes and he gets his waffle. He sits at his table with his iPad, puts on Netflix and finds a show that's appropriate and sits there and eats his waffle watching Paw Patrol or Puppy Dog Pals or whatever the heck he's into at this point, changes regularly and just eats his waffle. And I don't have, or he sits and he pets the cat and I don't have to get up with him anymore, which is like a whole brand new,
Yeah.
wonderful,
A nice
amazing
transitional
stage.
stage.
And it actually happens faster than you think. Cause I used to
For
say
sure.
the days are long, or what is it? The days are long,
The years
but the
are short.
time is short.
Yes.
And I only noticed, I went back on my Facebook or my text messages to my partner like a year ago and only realized a year ago we were still nighttime potty training.
Mm.
I didn't realize that because it happened so quickly, I guess. Like it seemed like it lasted forever, but
Right.
we'd gone through it, like I was waking him up and taking him to the bathroom, and it was
Mhm.
going, that was went on for like a year, and I felt
Right.
like it just lasted forever. And I didn't realize because now he's fully potty trained. Like
Yeah.
he gets up and he goes to the bathroom if he has to go. He mostly sleeps through the night without having to get up. He gets up in the morning, he goes to the bathroom, we move on like a normal grown human.
Human being. Yeah. It's so
And I'm like,
crazy.
wow, I can't believe that it's only been like less than a year since because it felt like it took forever to get
Right.
there.
For sure.
But it wasn't really that long ago that we were in that stage. The days feel so long,
Yeah. Sometimes they
but
do
it
for
goes
sure.
so fast.
Well, yeah, it feels like you sometimes get caught in an endless loop, right? That routine, like, okay, we're up at, well, little man, he gets up right now at 6:30. It's like, okay, we're up at 6:30. And it's like the same thing. Get everyone breakfast. Okay, feed the baby. try and get her down for nap. We're not doing nap today. Okay, that's fine. Let's try and entertain both of them. And you're right. And then the day does seem incredibly long. Like you're just waiting for your husband to get home from work sometimes, depending on the schedule and that. It's like, okay, half an hour, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 minute. Oh my God, he's late. Where is he? And then he finally gets in the door. It's like, here, take the baby for 5 minutes, take the kid for 5 minutes. It's like,
Right.
yeah, sometimes that's your day. But then you step back and you're like, oh my God, completely potty trained, has his own personality, has a favorite song, dresses
Right.
a certain way. It's like, yeah, the time just flies by. Like, I can't believe that little man is 5. It
Right.
feels like I had him yesterday. And
Right.
it also feels like he's been around for 100 years. But yeah, it's crazy. But it's the most rewarding thing for me in my life for sure.
I love being a mom. I'm a better person because I'm a mom. Through the
Hmm.
decisions that I had to make, the choices I had to make, the healing I had to do,
For
I
sure.
don't know if I would have bridged those things without having a kid.
No, and I don't know if I would have been able to get through some of the things I've gone through in life without having a kid either, right? They push you to have to keep going sometimes, right? Instead of
Hmm.
saying stagnant, you are continually pushing forward because not only do you have yourself to do that for, but now you have this other little being that, yeah, I
Right.
might have stayed stagnant in a lot of things had I not had him.
I'm grateful for him. I'm even I do tell him that. I do
Yep.
regularly say I'm grateful for you. And he
Right.
repeats it back. I'm not sure if he fully understands it, but it doesn't really matter. I'm trying to get him to understand the concept of gratitude and
Yes.
explaining I'm grateful for you. I'm glad that you're in my life. I'm grateful even though sometimes we have frustration, even though sometimes we lose
Hmm.
our tempers. I am grateful that you are part of my life because I wouldn't be who I am if you weren't here.
Right.
I
And
want
no
him
matter
to
what,
feel
yeah.
valuable.
Absolutely. And no matter what's happening, that's also a concept we really preach on is gratitude. But also, no matter what happens, like I'm always going to love you. Even if
Hmm.
you don't listen, if you're in trouble, if I'm cranky or whatever, like I always love you. Like
Hmm.
me loving you is not conditional. Like there's nothing you have to do or be for you to have love from me. Right.
Hmm. I will say being a mom has taught me more of the idea of unconditional love.
Yes.
Truthfully, like I don't think I understood that level of unconditional
Hmm.
until I had my kid, and
Right.
truly understanding that even on the worst days,
Hmm.
that love is always there no matter what. And it's amazing. It's hard. It's thankless at times. It is challenging. It pushes me to my limit and beyond regularly.
Right.
But I am so incredibly grateful to have the opportunity to raise a person who
Right.
I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know what his life is going to be like. I don't know what kind of career he's going to have. I don't know what kind of people he's going to touch. I don't know what kind of effect he's going to have on the world. But I'm
Right.
grateful to be raising a person who is going to be another person out there in the world, who's going to affect other people's lives in some way, shape, or form. Like it's it's a big responsibility. It's a
It
very
is.
big responsibility, but it's also pretty amazing.
It is. It is. It's the like I said before, the most incredible thing I've ever done. And I can't reiterate that enough. But I also need to remember that in the hardest of days too. So,
Yep. Motherhood is not for the faint of heart. I will say that.
no, and it will probably give you a heart condition, but that's okay.
And definitely gray hairs,
Well,
like a
I'm
whole
lucky
lot of them.
mine. Yeah. I know. That's yeah, my husband, he's like, I don't think I had gray hair before I met you, and we have 2 kids and I have so many. It's like it's a nice distinguished man look, you know.
So, just to kind of sum up,
Yes.
motherhood, it is hard on so many ways, and each stage is challenging with his brand new effects. And as they go from baby, has their
Right.
whole needs, and then like toddler, and then preschooler, and then
Yes.
actual kindergartner and going to school, and then as they move into the teenage phase, has a whole new set
For
of fun
sure.
challenges that you get to deal with. And when they start driving and all of these different things, it's challenging and hard,
Mhm.
but it pushes us to be better people.
It does, for sure. And like you said earlier, knowing when to ask for help makes all the difference in the world. Like, don't be afraid to reach out for help if you need it. There are a ton of online resources, especially if you're in the postpartum phases. And if you're dealing with some older kids now, again, like reach out if you need help. There's nothing wrong or bad about needing help
Mhm.
parenting or being a human.
And taking time for yourself, that kind of pulls back into
Absolutely.
the talk I did before about self-care.
Yes.
That is valuable and important. It is not selfish to take
Yes.
time for yourself. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You have to have something to give for yourself. And it's not,
Yep.
no shame in asking someone, can you take my kids for a few hours just so I can wash my hair, shave my legs,
Yeah. Feel
take
like
a
a human
nap?
again.
Whatever it is you need for self-care, read a book, take a
Hmm.
class, whatever, all those different types of self-care that I talked about in the self-care episode, the different categories. I'm not going
Hmm.
to go into it again, but like those things are valuable and important to be a parent, because you cannot parent in a healthy, valuable way to your child when you
Right.
are absolutely at your snapping point.
Well,
You
that's it.
can't.
It's not healthy for anybody. So if that's what it takes for you to take a little bit of time for yourself, rephrase it in your mind saying, this benefits everyone. It not only benefits me, it 100% does, but it benefits everyone around you. Because, like you said, if you're constantly a snap case, who's that helping? And it's going to make you
Right.
feel terrible too, right?
Right. That mom guilt.
Yep.
After you're done raging, that guilt can
Yep.
be like, well, how much did you break them today? And then like that guilt comes back in.
Yeah.
We can avoid that if we just remember we're human. We're
Yep.
just people.
Have that
We're
compassion
not,
for yourself.
yeah, we're not superhuman. Nobody's Superman over here. We're all, we
No.
are just human beings who also need to be cared for, just like
Yes.
we care for our children. And that self care is so, so, so important.
100%. I couldn't agree more.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Emily. This was a wonderful talk.
Well, thank you for having me and a very happy Mother's Day to you as
And
well,
a
Tova.
happy Mother's Day to you. I hope that you enjoy, get a little bit of downtime at the very least. I'm hoping to get some yoga in my on my
That sounds
Mother's
incredible.
Day. Just get maybe a
Yes.
little bit of time by myself to get a nice good stretch and care for my body. Maybe a
Yep.
little bit of outside time to read a book alone. It'd be
Or just
lovely.
go out into the woods and scream at the top of your lungs, whatever
Hey,
works for you.
you know what? It's funny you say that. My husband had my son last night just yelling. I sat outside because I'm like, it's
Yep.
too loud for me. I can't be any of that. But just yelling to let
Yep.
out some of that extreme amount of energy that's in his body, just yelling at the top of his lungs, making as much noise as he possibly could in an appropriate moments when,
Yeah.
people aren't sleeping.
Hit that pressure release. There's nothing wrong with
Right?
that.
There's nothing wrong with adults either. Going outside, going to the woods, going and just yell, let it all out, just yell until it's out. And then you feel better and you're like, oh, well, it's out now. Now I feel pretty good.
Now I can breathe.
Now I can
Perfect.
breathe. So I hope you get some time to yourself. I know it's harder when you got more than one little one. I'm grateful that I only have one. But I know it's hard to get some time for yourself, but I hope that you enjoy your Mother's Day and find something
Thank you so
peaceful.
much. I hope you do as well, Tova. Thanks.
So we'll have you back again for another talk because I enjoy having you here.
And I enjoy speaking with you. Thank you so much.
So bye.
Bye.
So I hope you enjoyed our talk with Emily the way that I enjoyed our talk with Emily. That was wonderful. And I want to remind you always, love yourself. Have compassion for yourself. If your day in motherhood did not go that awesome, it's okay. Tomorrow is a new day. We go to sleep, we do our best, we let go of what didn't work, and we try again tomorrow. It's okay. It's okay to mess up. The fact that you ask yourself if you're a good parent shows enough that you are already a good parent. The fact that you care if you're a good parent makes you a good parent. And we just try. We try again. We do our best and we try again. So, with that, we're going to pull out our affirmation card for the week, getting into our Mother's Day. What do mothers need to know? What is the good affirmation to help us all through Motherhood. Oh, this is a great one. This one is beautiful. Perfect timing. This card is I am whole. These are our cards from the I Am Everything company, the I Am Everything cards from the I Am Media company. And this card says, I am perfectly created. I am a wonderfully unique individual. Every lesson I have learned, every risk I have taken, and every achievement I have made contributed to who I am. Because of that, I am whole. So I want you to remember that too. You are whole. Parenting can take a big toll and it can be really hard, but you are whole. You are perfectly created exactly as you are. You are talented. You are amazing. You are wonderfully unique. And you are just doing your best. And that's all any of us can do is do our best. We do our best in ourselves and we do our best for our children. So I hope that you have a wonderful Mother's Day. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're following on YouTube. If you're listening on the podcast, don't forget to follow and share if you found this episode interesting. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by sending donations to PayPal at getinwe'regoinghealing@gmail.com. You can send donations to buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/getinhealing. You can send a donation through Patreon. I've started a Patreon account, so you'll get extra bonuses each week on each the different talks, different information that will help you and walk you through stuff. So that's at patreon.com/getinhealing. Don't forget to follow on Facebook and Instagram, where I share inspirational quotes and videos and ideas that may help you along your way for your healing path. Love and light, fellow human. Happy Mother's Day. Have a great day. See you next week.